Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's webinar. As you probably know by now, I'm Jim Gordon, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. And these webinars are a joy for me. And this one today is particularly welcome. My guest today is Linda Eaglespeaker, who my colleague, my friend, both my teacher and my student. Very nice to have that relationship. And so we're going to be talking about, in the context of Women's History Month, which has just come to an end, we're going to be talking about the history of the first women on this continent, who of course were Native Americans. We call them Native Americans or Indians or indigenous people. They were here before white people, black people, yellow people, brown people were here. So we're going to talk about that history, and particularly the history of the women's lineage, of which Linda is very much a part. And then we're going to talk more about, how Indigenous wisdom can inform us and help us to move through this difficult time. So welcome, Linda. Welcome, everyone. We'll begin with a couple minutes of soft belly breathing. So let's sit comfortably, everyone. Remembering this is a concentrated meditation, and we're focusing on the breath coming in through our nose and out through our mouth. On the word soft as we breathe in, and belly as we breathe out. Allowing our eyes to be closed if that's comfortable, to eliminate so much external stimulation. And focusing on our bellies softening and relaxing as we exhale, as we focus on the breath coming in through the nose and out through the mouth, and on the word soft as we breathe in, and belly as we breathe out. If thoughts come, let them come. Notice them. Let them go. Gently bring your mind back to soft belly. Couple more slow, deep, soft belly breaths. Okay, let's open our eyes, let our attention come back in the room. Welcome again, everyone, and welcome Linda Eaglespeaker. Linda is an enrolled member of the Blackfoot Confederacy in Southern Alberta, Canada, Kainai, and Blackfeet tribes. There's a distinction. I'm not sure I understand. If the tribes are in those different places, you can tell us more about that. She has a traditional given name, which I love. It's holy medicine, shining woman, which is so perfect for who you are and for this, extraordinary person you are, whom I've come to know over these last, I don't even know how many years now. But Linda is a part of a lineage which she'll discuss with us, of women healers, women traditional healers, and she brings that wisdom and that experience to the work she does with us as a member of our Center for Mind-Body Medicine faculty. We met her through the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, where she worked for 15 years and doing a variety of kinds of work with women and girls in the community in Minneapolis and throughout the area of the Twin Cities. So welcome, Linda. It's great to have you. I was saying, it's so good to see you. I always enjoy being with you. It's always an interesting and a good and a deep time, a time often filled with both tears and laughter, and sometimes outrage as well.
Oh, yeah.
And
all emotions.
What's that?
All emotions.
All the emotions. So, Linda, tell everyone a little bit about who you are and a little bit about this lineage and the role. I don't think people generally outside of traditional communities understand the role of women in many of the traditional communities here in North America. So talk a little bit about who you are and where you come from and how you got to be this sort of wonderful healer who's so open and embracing not only of traditional wisdom, but also of many different cultures.
Okinitsokwa. Nisto anasta na tuwikinaki. Gistua is the batapisinos. And what I said in my language is just a beautiful greeting from my elder's heart. And in our Blackfoot language, there's only 13 letters in our alphabet. And so when I say Oki, spelling O-K-I, I'm not just saying, hi, how are you? I'm saying, I welcome your spirit. I hold your spirit. Oki nitsokwa, all of my relatives. Nistoa, anasta. My gifted name is not the Wikanaki. And I'm careful not to say that name more than 4 times, because then I will call all the 7 generations behind me that held that name. And in translation, it means holy medicine, shining woman. I am the holder of that name in this 7th generation. And my mother held that same name, and my grandmother and my great-great-grandmothers going back all of those generations. And the reason why we have the same name is because in our tribe, my mother's tribe is located in Montana, right near Glacier Park. And she's a member of the Blackfeet people. And she is also a healer, but also she's a ceremonial herbalist. And a ceremonial herbalist is very different than someone that grows vegetables and all of that. We are called upon as a family, as through generations. We prepare, let's say that maybe Jim was going to have a ceremony and some elders are going to be coming in. So then Jim would call me and let me know what the ceremony was going to be, what particular medicines that he would need. Maybe he needs sage or sweetgrass or different medicines. And so that is my responsibility as the herbalist to prepare them, fulfill that request. So in order to live that life also too, you have to live in a ceremonial frame most of your day. My grandmothers were always like that. So I have a little old grandmother I remember really closely. Her name was Fanny Marebones Morgan. She was a very fierce old lady. Everybody knew her. And if we go back generations in my family line, within the women, they were, their last name would come from makes cold weather. And the reason that my 5th generation back was called makes cold weather is because our religious societies, when they gathered in a storm, would come upon my great change things. Okay, so I come from a long line of those women. We grew up outside of Glacier Park, about 28 miles out of a town called Browning, south, in a community called Old Agency.
So, Linda, how is that tradition passed on? And I know there have been many obstacles, including the ones that you faced as a young person. One of the I know one of the struggles that maybe you can talk about is there's this sort of vast reservoir of wisdom and experience and history. And in the confrontations between the sort of the native world and the world of the dominant white society, the white society, including very much the US government, had tried to wipe out much of this tradition. And how has it survived, and how has that struggle played out in your own life as well?
Well, I can tell you that for just this you have painting this beautiful picture of my family up from the time that I was born until about the age of about 5.5. You have this beautiful world of ceremony and celebration and prayers, and every morning waking with your grandparents and hearing that language spoken every single day when you're that age. I came into the I guess the strength and the power of plants at the age of 3, and it goes into another tradition. It goes into another teaching. In order to be able to understand what I mean is that as a human being, Nistua, Gistua, we are human beings. Next, we are male or female, and we are equal to and no greater than the plants that we pick, use for medicines. And we're no greater than the animals. We're all equal to each other. And those are the things that we learn as young ones as we're going along. And if you can see that world where I had my grandmothers, my great grandmothers were picking medicines, we're living this beautiful life. And then all of a sudden the Western world comes into our worlds. But the thing you have to understand is that that same Western world came into my great grandmother's world and also came into my mother's world, and then eventually came into my world. And what I mean by that is that, I've told this story to Jim before, and in fact, he's the very first one that I was ever able to share. I guess my connection with historical trauma one beautiful afternoon in San Francisco in your group. It was amazing, amazingly healing. But I think with what I'm talking about is I'm talking about that I can only speak to my family. I can only speak to my Eagle Speaker and my Gardapi families in Southern Alberta and in Montana. We are survivors. And what I mean is that as a survivor, I'm actually here talking to you. And I'm probably one of the last of my generation. We are residential boarding school survivors. 3 generations on both sides of my family, maternal and paternal families. We survived. My grandfathers, my grandmothers, my moms, my mom, my dad, and then myself. And
tell us about that experience, because that was, I remember when I first heard from you about your experience in the boarding school, how powerful and disturbing it was. And it's so very much a part of the history of your history and so many other people who experience the pain and the threats and the great damage for the boarding schools. So talk a little bit about those boarding schools. What happened and what happened to you?
I think I can
survive.
Yeah, I think I can describe that. And I did my ever first mind body medicine drawings, and it just came. it was just so deep and it was so profound for me to, as I was drawing, I was just drawing this square box. And then all of a sudden, all these little windows started to appear. And then up in the far corner, there was a little child peeking out. And I began to realize, like, I started getting worried. I started getting scared. Not because I didn't feel safe in that group, but I knew it was time. It was time to tell the tale, not hold on to it anymore. And you know, for my own well-being and for my own healing, it had to come out. It was so deep in my heart center here that it was just occupying every part of my life and everything. And it's just you know, you're 5.5 and you're brought to the school with the understanding that at the end of the day, you're going to go home and you're going to go see your parents, but that doesn't happen. And so, in that drawing that I drew, I still have that drawing. When I have that drawing, I look up and that little child that's way up in that corner window. That's where us young ones were brought up there. We were all between the ages of at least under 8. There's 40 of us up there, 20 beds on each side. And I would have to say that I had to learn really, really fast because I didn't experience violence in my home in my first 6 years of life. Patience, quietness, teachings, stories, ceremonies. So I think that in an instant, I'd have to say, like, just like that, instantly, as a child, I felt pain for the very first time.
What happened? Why were you put in the boarding school? What was going on?
At that time, our people, we're talking about the 1960s, some late 1950s, but for me it was the 60s. And at that time, we weren't allowed to go to off reservation schools. Our only choice at that time was to go to either St. Paul's, which is Anglican, or to go to St. Mary's, which is Catholic, boarding school. And that was happening all over Alberta. There was many boarding schools all over Alberta. Later on, they moved St. Mary's and St. Paul's onto our reservation. But that, they always hear that saying, like, kill the Indian. How do you do that with the child? Hey, but in all of my studying and my research and my reasoning, for my people, they were very fierce-like, very warlike. If you ever study the Blackfoot people, we're very territorial. We're one of the few tribes that retains some of our original territories up against the Rocky Mountains. So they knew that, yeah, take our land, we're still there and we're still going to fight. But how can we break them? Can we break them at the forts by not providing food? Can we not give them rations? Could we stop them from going off the reservations? They knew in that the Miputapoka, my favorite child, my gift of a child, is the ultimate most importance for the Blackfoot people, their children. There's how we can control their people. Let's take their children. And it began with my grandfathers, my Grandpa Charlie, my Grandpa Joseph, Montana and Canada. It began with them. But they were more like indentured farm laborers. They were brought there and they were farmed out. My grandfather spent 14 years with one farmer and never received a dime or paid. My grandmother was a housemaid. And then the boarding schools started to exist when my parents started going in, and they were huge schools. So just through those generations with my parents, and then all the way to my line. I think the whole purpose was to really, really eliminate our whole existence. Wipe us off the And I sit here some days and I think, you know what? I never learned how to read and write. Mm-mm. In fact, when I finally did get into school, I was so far behind. By the time I got to 12th grade, I had to do. I couldn't even spell or read or write. I learned a lot of other things there, though. Most of it a lot of pain. And I can honestly sit here and say that, and my CMBM family knows that I suffered physically in there. I have 6 documented injuries of broken collarbones and broken ribs, broken leg. Um, and that was because I was a real fighter. Um, I tried to protect the little ones from a pedophile. Yeah.
In a sense, your work in all the years since has been so much about taking care of, protecting those who need care, and also about transmitting the wisdom of your culture. How did you get to that place from this little girl who's fighting the boarding school where nobody in her family wanted her to be, but she was there against her will, and people trying to really break your spirit and break your connection with your tradition? How did you reestablish that or maintain that connection? And then how did you take the next steps out into the world to become the healer who you are?
I think that to this day, I always have to thank my parents. We came out of boarding school just as fast as we went in. Kids were running around the school. One day I had scarlet fever and I was really sick. And the kids were running all over and they were just screaming, "We're going home, we're going home." But to me, I kept wondering, like, where's home? Is my mom alive? Is my dad alive? Are my grandparents alive? I don't know. No one's told me anything. But just as we came out of it, we all got in and we all went home and we're going down that road for a long time. And there were 7 of us going home out of 9. Where are we going? But my parents hadn't changed. Us kids, we didn't know them, Jim. We had quite honestly learned how to hate them. That was pounded into us that they would never be anything good for us. We got off that bus and there was my mom and dad and the other little ones, and my mom and dad, they honored us for 7 days because we wouldn't go in the house. My dad put up a wall tent and my mom took care of us. But during that time, you wonder why, how did I get back? Because my mom and dad made that call. And if you remember back in the 1960s, it was like only one community had a phone. One neighbor had a phone. So they got a hold of my grandparents and my grandma. And on the 7th day, they came. And it was really hard for my parents to let us go. But myself, my sisters, we all left with my grandma Katie. And my brothers, they all left with Fanny Marebones Mogan for another 4 years. And our parents came back and forth, but they were like strangers. And it took a long time to reestablish that connection and that love. And it's even hard to this day after long years. My mom's been gone now. But for me, it was going back into that same environment with my grandmother. From day, as soon as we got into that back seat, she would say, "Amo stupi, amo stupi." And we hadn't heard Blackfoot for many years. And what she was saying is, "My little one, sit here." She was gesturing us to come to the car. We learned by full immersion. I'm not going to speak English to you. I'm going to speak fluent Blackfoot to you. And that's what it was. Every moment of the day when we woke up. Every single time, and learning medicines and planting them and learning how to make them physically into different types of medicines. That all came back. It was still there. I can hear the medicines, like medicines, like even our plants, like sage, they have spirit, they have song, they have dance, they have voice, and they call you if you're listening. If you're listening, these medicines will call you. And what I've done is one day I had this opportunity to go in to meet this man. I was worried and scared, and I just read on there that I was on Jim Gordon's room. And I just listened intently and everything. I was just so fascinated. And it was so, when we started to do soft belly, it was like going into sweat lodge. As I sat there, my breath was going down like we're taught to prepare for sweat lodge. Lower your breath. Don't breathe through your nose. Breathe in deeply. It was like I was getting ready to go into a sweat lodge, into ceremony. And so I looked at it as a ceremony, and I kept wondering, you know what? Wow, this is incredible. So I took that time to be certified. I took all of that time to go through everything that I needed to do. And in the end, myself and another incredible elder by the name of Donna Chappelle, she is Ojibwe. We took it upon ourselves after all of our training, and we sat down just over coffee, and we talked about it, and we thought, how can we do this? How can we indigenize this? You know, Jim, he gives us the permission that we have this incredible training, knowing how to heal with this breath. And then all of a sudden, you know what? I can bring my culture in. I can add language. I can add prayer. I can add altar. I can add medicines. And I can add talking pieces, our grandfathers, I was so impressed that even at all our different trainings that our faculty would use grandfather stones. Wow, what an incredible process. We have done incredible work over the years before both of our retirement. We ran a Butler Family Foundation grant for 2 years and drew numbers into the thousands by teaching what you actually taught us, Jim. Staying with the model. You can never miss anything as long as you stay with the center's model and then add your little piece and your little dynamics to it. It's just incredible. So
It's been incredible for all of us to participate in that marriage between traditional ceremony, traditional healing, and our center's model, which of course is also ultimately derived from many traditions around the world. I want to ask you to talk a little bit about the work you were doing when you met us at the Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center. What the work that you've been doing for a number of years? What have you been doing? And then we can move into how you're combining it now with the center's model. But so tell people, because it's a really extraordinary organization that which is where I first met you. So
yeah, I was there for almost 16 years. I just retired September 4th. Before I was even at the center, have a total of about 35 years as a social worker, working on my reservation and working as a social worker for the resource center. You know, when I first arrived here, I wanted to really be at a center that was designed for women. I wanted to be at a center that was designed for Indigenous families. And so arriving here from Canada for the very first time, all I did is I just went in and I researched different organizations. And I ran across this most beautiful Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center. And quite accidents, I got an interview and I even started the next week. But their abilities there are just incredible. They have housing, they have transitional housing. At that time, they had a first of its kind children's daycare center where all of our staff were qualified, certified teachers. I think at that time we had some of the most beautiful, beautiful programs, and we were just at the forefront of being authors in VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act Justice Program. So we had a really dynamic leader at that time who had left us a few short years later. But what really drew me to MIWRC, Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, were the women themselves. As I began to do my job, my first job was intensive in-home, and frankly, I was quite shocked. Just going into their homes and just seeing the dysfunction and the chemical abuse and the layers of mental health and the elder abuse. It was just intense with my 12 families. So I knew that I had to take a step backwards because my young people were identifying with the local gangs when I would ask them, which tribe are you? The language that was used in the homes around the old people was just incredible. So, and then I found out that only one of my families out of 12 was actually enrolled. So if you don't have your tribal connection and you don't know the language or you don't know the customs or traditions of your people, that is the foundation of me being a Blackfoot woman. So I took it upon myself and I went to my supervisor and I said, we're going to get them enrolled. At the end of all of that, out of those 12 families, 11 were enrolled, plus their children. But it took a lot of work.
So a lot of the healing work it was clear to you from the beginning had to do with reconnecting with the tradition, reconnecting with the lineage, reconnecting with the ceremony and the sort of the wisdom of as well as the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I moved on from there and I went into 8 years of a position for child protection. And I think it was really, really important. I was a totally different child protection worker. So just helping my families get through that process, like, their children are removed, just what happened? Not really realizing there's chemical dependency, there's violence there might be child sexual abuse, there might be almost anything all wrapped up in it. Sometimes it's a child protection case as well. It's running with a criminal case. So I worked with that for the longest time, and that's how I really got to know a lot of the families. I moved up from there and I took over the position of Sacred Journeys director. And so under that program, I ran the domestic violence program, the sexual assault program. I had I had the Healing Journeys program, which is an ongoing program for older women. And then I had 2 programs for sex trafficked youth. I had one for youth that were under the age of 18, and they were sent to us by Hennepin County. They're survivors of sex trafficking as youth, as children, sometimes even babies. And then the older group was between the ages of 16 and 18. So I made sure that I divided them up and had 2 case managers with all of them. So that's where I kind of got into that and began to get into that work of what is that historical trauma? What is that? What is the end part of it? Where does it end for our women and our people? And what I found is that, wow, we did a Shattered Hearts report. If you ever want to go onto MIWRC, it's still there. You can pull it off. And the Shattered Heart report was done on the Healing Journeys program. The women that were 18 to 65. But what we found is there's just incredible findings, and that was that at least 85% of our women, their first experience with sex trafficking was in their own home.
So, Linda, if you could give it some sense, you've begun to give some sense of why mind-body medicine was sort of rang a bell, was appealing, felt like, oh, this is also part of who I am, part of my home. Can you say a little bit more about that? And then I'd like you to talk about how you bring together the work with mind-body medicine and with traditional ceremony and with the sort of the history of your people, of Indigenous people generally. Because I had an opportunity to experience some of that when you invited me to the groups for the women who were trafficked, the older women as well as the young girls. So talk a little bit about first your experience. Why, and you've said some, but the connection between mind-body medicine and traditional healing practices, and then how you bring those two together in your work in the community now.
I think the thing that really, really stays in my mind is a woman, and I always remember her, and I can call her by a different name. I might call her Carrie. But Carrie always let me know that I'm not worth anything. I'm invisible. I'm the invisible population, and people just walk by me, or they just use me, or they just hurt me. No one can help me. And that just touched me really deep, really deep. I think I was going through certification at that time, and I knew that I had to help. No one helps us. No one wants to listen to us. No one cares that we are hurt, that we are physically abused, that we are sexually assaulted. And no one cares because we're invisible. And so I knew that with that beautiful training that we had with the center, where it brings you right into that experience of just you as an individual, I can reach in there really, really deep. And I'm going to be able to really, really take that onto myself and be able to help them with all the knowledge that we had and all the training that we had, but blending it with all that I have, the knowledge that I have from my relatives and from my mothers and my grandmothers, and being a ceremonialist, being a sun dancer for 16 years, wrapped in ceremony, all of that time, wrapping that all together into one with the mind body medicine piece being in the middle, an integral part of it, and ceremony. You know, when I say invisible, they don't feel that they can deserve to go to a ceremony. And they'll say that I don't feel worthy, that people have told me that I don't deserve.
So what you're saying is these women, many of whom are living on the street, who've been trafficked and abused and often raped as well, that they felt ignored and abused and taken advantage of by the dominant society. They didn't feel they fit in there. They were victims of that, and they didn't feel they fit in with the traditional world either. So they were betwixt and between. They're really nowhere.
But once we brought them into the center, into a circle, and we brought them into that circle, and they had the experience of learning what breath is, that first breath of life, and teaching them their humanness, that I am a human being first, and that I didn't do this upon myself, that all human beings are born equal to each other, you know, and then teaching them that this is your circle. I am here to be part of the group, and you are here to share, but being very, very, very careful to not re-traumatize. The trauma is really deep with them, and it moves around all through them, but just being able to really, really make them feel like they are part of that group, that they are here, that they are being heard, that someone really, really understands, and they take their time. So being really skillful with that check-in gets a little bit long each time, but you got to be really, really be able to control without offending, but feeling very, very welcome with them. I noticed that they really begin to open up about the fourth group, and they begin to blend with each other. They begin to become sisters. They begin to take care of each other. They begin to care for each other outside of the agency.
So it's so remarkable that the conventional mental health point of view, I won't call it wisdom, is, well, those people really are not going to stay with the program. They're not, you can't get them. But you created in this group the welcome that you extended, and the way you were with people, and the way you and Donna and others whom you've trained as well, using our model and combining it with traditional wisdom, you've created a place where those women and those girls do feel at home. And it's
Oh
really
yeah.
quite remarkable.
Your groups have to be really, really private when it comes to the young girls. The Minneapolis Police Department, they have a group called PALS, and they're all under the age of 18. They've never experienced any type of trafficking or anything like that, but they've experienced a lot of violence and disrupted homes and single homes. And so the police, the two officers came, one's native and one's non-native. They came and they just, we're losing our girls. You know, there's 12 of them. Can you help us? And Don and I put our heads together and we said, we'll do our very, very best. We can't give names or anything like that, but so far over the years for the Minneapolis Police Department, and PALS group continues. We've done 4 years consecutively with the PALS group. So we'll do the older girls first, and then we'll do the younger girls group. And they're just incredible, incredible. The results of that are part of our grant. We see so many of these young girls going on, and they're going on to Osberg, they're going on to college, they're going on to different universities where they're even finishing high school. They come from generations where no one's ever finished school on maternal and paternal sides. And for the very first time, a young girl is actually graduating. Wow. Honor her in every way. Yeah.
It's beautiful. You're creating and perhaps recreating a world that comes from deep in your tradition of bringing the girls together and bringing the women together. Do you feel that as you're doing this, that you're using the center's model of the small group and teaching the self-care techniques, but it's also infused with the wisdom and with the kind of cellular memory of girls and women coming together?
Yeah, my work continues. My work continues now. I've moved on to still doing the trafficking work. Um, I'm doing that with adult survivors, professional women. I finished a group off in Washington, Idaho, and Oregon for a lady that's there, and she runs an organization for survivor women. And they run like they're incredible women. They're national. They run domestic violence sites, sexual assault sites, all of that. But even with all that education, with family centered, everything, they have a beautiful home. Their businesses are in place. There's still that one trauma piece that they still hold on to. And so we need to find that one piece. And so that work continues. I finished off a 10-week group with that. It was amazing results with all those ladies. So I'm going to be going back in May. I'm going to do a reunion group with them. I really miss them. Just about finishing off another group here. There's an organization here that works with survivors on the streets. But they're taking that model also too for women professionals that at one time were child survivors. And so I'm just finishing off. That was awesome too. But they're from the 4 directions. I've got 2 ladies from Ethiopia. I've got a lady from Somalia. I've got they're from all over the place. But it's just that doesn't matter. It's that comes down to your humanness, eh? And who can come in there and hurt you isn't really, you know, plants aren't going to hurt you. Animals aren't going to hurt you purposely. But another human being comes along during that time of what I call innocence. Comes along a time that you were born to the time that you're just a young person. And another human being will come along and hurt you emotionally, physically, in many different ways. It's always another human being.
And
And
how
that
do
always
you
comes back.
deal with that? How do you help them deal with the fact that somebody has hurt them deliberately? Unlike, as you say, unlike the animals, unlike the plants, unlike the natural world, there's a deliberate hurting. How do you help the girls, and how have you helped yourself deal with that hurt that comes?
Wow, our amazing meditations, our amazing guided imagery. helps me and helps the girls. When I'm talking about meditation, I'm talking about they don't know what safe place is. Where is that? I've lived a life of just complete torture as a child, but we can still find that good, safe place, a good, comfortable place for you. And then once you're in there, finding someone that can guide you along in those directions. And we're going into these really, really deep meditations, what we do is we use yoga mats, and the elders sit in the middle like we have a circle. So the two of us, Donna and I, are back to back. And the women are all in a circle with their heads pointed towards us. And that's how we do our meditations while they're listening. The music is still there, but they get in so deep that's there. And you want to be really, really careful that, no, you don't want to traumatize them in any way whatsoever, to bring back that memory. We know that memory hides back up here and it moves forward here to the thinking brain. Wow, we don't want to re-traumatize them. So I think it's just using your language, your voice, your tone when you are speaking to them, and watching them very, very careful that they don't go too deep. You just want to touch the surface with them and begin the healing, because after the group is over, then we'll be sending them to deeper tribal. If you're Ojibwe, I'm going to send you to 6 different elders. If you're Menominee, I'm going to send you to Elder Melda Goodwin. If you are Dakota, I'm going to send you to different medicine people to begin maybe the sweat lodge and the healing part and all of that.
So
It all leads up to that.
So what our work, and you've said this and others have said this, the work of the Center for Mind-Body Medicine, which includes the safe place and wise guide imagery that you're describing, is a kind of a way, a path that helps bring the girls, the women, and anyone who comes back into touch with who they are. And then it becomes possible to once again more fully embrace the tradition and the healing power of tradition. Is that right?
Yes.
And I
Yeah,
think
because a lot of these women they've never been taught how to pray. They don't know what the purpose of prayer is. They don't know what the medicines are. They've been feeling so unworthy, even as a small child. They're told, no, you can't touch sage. No, you can't touch sweetgrass. No, they're over and over and over again.
Mm.
But if you put the medicines on the altar in front of you, and what we do is we just instruct them that these medicines belong to all of us. So Jim, if I'm checking in and you're feeling something, then I welcome you to just reach down and maybe pick up the sage, or maybe just pick up the sweetgrass on your own when you feel it, when you're feeling her suffering, to help yourself. And they learn how to help themselves by reaching over there for the very first time. They're gonna take a braid of sweetgrass. Probably not as big as this one, but they're gonna take sweetgrass and they'll hold it, and maybe even take the end and light it. Once they have that connection to medicines, and they know these are part of my people.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told wrong. I can smudge. I can pray. Even if I'm incarcerated, I can go to the chaplain and I can pray. And these medicines help them to get there, to reach that point.
And
Yeah.
during this recent period, with COVID-19, and I know that Indigenous people have suffered disproportionately from this pandemic. And I know that your services are even sort of more needed now. And you've put together a little kit, which you showed me a little bit earlier, that you're showing. So what are you seeing and hearing from people now as you meet with them, and how are you meeting them with some of these tools of traditional healing?
I think it began about a year ago, and there were so many requests for prayers coming in, not only from Minnesota, but coming from all over the country. People dismayed in not being able to find medicines to begin with, and they would say, I can't even find anything to pray with. And I would tell them and teach them that you can just take yourself and just stand out there and pray when the sun starts rising, like so many cultures do. But then what I ended up doing is I ended up putting together these little kits. And in these little kits, you've got, in the red, you've got traditional tobacco, you've got sweetgrass, you've got sage, you even have a little matches. And then the back part of it, we have flat cedar. And I call this very simple. I just call it a prayer kit. And then what I'm going to send it to you. If you're in wanting to pray and you need those medicines, I've made these for you. And I've sent them all over the country. I've sent them into Canada, and I've sent them to all different organizations. In fact, this afternoon, I'm going to get ready and deliver 50 kits to 2 different organizations. One is Minnesota Indian Women's Resource Center, because our ladies are still coming in for services. And so each one of those ladies is going to have one of my kits to put into their purse or something. Teaches you how to pray.
Say to people when I want to know what you say to people or write to people when you give them the kits. And also if people who are watching us want to learn more or want to get one of these kits, how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, through you.
Through me? Okay.
You know where to find me all the time. I know where to find you all the time. All I have to do is just have your address and I mail it to you. So I'm mailing out some flat cedar. It's one of the first things that I did. We use flat cedar in our homes and we boil it on the stove and we steep it for about 2 hours. And so the droplets go all the way up into the air, and whatever's there in the air, they kind of wrap around it like that and they pull it out. And so what I've been doing is instructing people to use flat cedar, which I provide. For women, if you're really, really having a hard time, then I'm providing you with a method of taking care of yourself by doing a cedar bath. And I give you the full instructions. I give you this prayer kit. But also as a family, I made these and I send them out to families. And what they are is these are red, white, black, and yellow pieces of cloth. And they're little squares. And each one of these squares represents all the cultures of the world. Yellow, all Oriental cultures of the world. Red represents all indigenous cultures of the world. White, all European cultures that came here. Black, all black cultures of the world. And it's a very simple kit. It just comes with tobacco and it comes with twine. And as a family, you're just going to sit across from each other. It comes with tobacco. And let's say each family takes I'm going to do all the black color. Or I might want to do a little bit of both. That as you're praying and as you're thinking about maybe that friend of you have. You do a lot of traveling and you mix with so many of these beautiful people, Jim, in all the continents that you go to.
Yes.
And so if you were doing this, you would just take this cloth, you take a little tobacco and you put it in the middle and you'd pray for that friend, for their health and their strength and their families, and that they would have a good life in good ways. And when you're done, you just take that like that. You can have a little tiny tie. And all you do is tie it onto your string. And then when you're all done with everybody that's at the table, look at all the prayers that are there and all the friends that you thought of and all the families. Even include your fur babies. We've just added those too, because fur babies were so important for us, our cats and dogs, while we were going through this COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But what it teaches our young people is that all of these cultures that we're talking about, it teaches them that we are equal to each other. We are no greater than each other. We are human beings first.
Linda, that is such an incredibly important lesson for this time when there's so much division and so much fear and hatred and uncertainty and separation.
It's beautiful for children. That's what I'm going to be dropping some off at a school for kids. And it's beautiful for them to really, really understand that and to be accepting. You know, that generation is just incredible. So that's what I've been doing, keeping out of trouble.
So you're passing on. We're sort of coming back to where we began. You're passing on the tradition and wisdom and the tools of your tradition, as well as the tools and techniques of mind-body medicine to the next generation and next generations.
Yeah. Because I just ask, the only thing that I ask for this is I don't ask for payment of any kind because it belongs to Sakami Tapiaki, Grandmother Earth. And it's not my place and time to profit from her at all. No way. And I do it because it's important that we have that next generation that truly believes that we are equal to each other, that we do love each other. I'm so proud of my little grandson. His name is Shiloh. He's a gardener. He's only 5, but he knows these things already. And it makes me so happy to know that, you know, I have grandchildren that don't see color. They don't see gender. They just see human beings. And that's all we need to do, Jim, hey? Just see human beings.
Yes. And Linda, that's such a beautiful teaching that I hope everyone who's watching us will take into their hearts and their lives. One of the things that I've observed in my years of knowing you is that your depth and your wisdom, that, as you say, goes back to the earliest part of your life and goes back many generations, that you have the capacity to bring that forward and to create that sense of connection, both with what you're saying and with you, the being, the whole being you bring to it. So we're going to have to come to a close with this session. And those who are interested in receiving this sort of healing kit that Linda has put together, you can get in touch with me and we will pass on the information to Linda. It's jgordon@cmbm.org. And Linda leads groups for the Center for Mind Medicine, not only in the Twin Cities, but now online. And Linda's one of our faculty. And as we expand our program, and we want to particularly welcome any Indigenous people who are watching us. We're working with more and more tribes and more tribal groups all over North America. So we want to invite you to be in touch and want to let everyone else know that whoever we're working with, that Linda is there with us. She's one of our faculty, and she's one of the people who embodies this, as you can hear and feel, this deep understanding that we are all human, we're all in this together, we are all each of our relations. So Linda, thank you so much for being with me. We're going to
You're welcome.
Another minute or so of slow, deep breathing. And so let's just sit together and relax and breathe deeply. And as we're breathing and relaxing, I'm feeling, and perhaps I invite you to feel, just the comfort of being with Linda and this sense of coming home that is so much a part of who she is, and I hope so much a part of what we do at the Center for Mind-Body Medicine, that we're coming home and we're here with each other now, and that this understanding is particularly important at this critical time in history, that we are all each other's relations. We are all related to each other. Couple more slow, deep, soft belly breaths. Okay, let's open our eyes and I'm looking at Linda.
It's get squinty without my glasses. There we go.
Now we can see each other. Okay. Linda, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's wonderful.
Good to spend this time with you, Jim. That's very rare to get a whole hour with you.
It's rare for me too. And until next time, thank
All
you.
righty. Bye-bye.